Welcome to Embracing Autism IRL. Today we have an incredible guest, Saunders, a retired police captain and founder and CEO of Project Lifesaver International. If you're an autism parent, you know that wandering is one of the biggest safety concerns for our children. But what happens when a child goes missing? How do law enforcement and search teams respond? And what can we as parents do to prepare? Gene has spent decades leading efforts to bring missing individuals home quickly and safely. And today, he's here to share expert insights, real life success stories, and practical steps every parent should know. So let's dive in. Welcome, Gene.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for taking the time. This is actually a program that we've looked into extensively for our local community. So I wanted to make sure that people were aware of it. So I just wanted to start off by getting to know a little bit more about you and how you got involved in this. So as somebody who has an extensive background in law enforcement, can you typically or share how you typically attempt to approach the problems with children who are autistic that tend to be missing? Because this is something that happens very often in autism community. Autistic kids are high risk for elopement and high risk for going missing. So for a little context for our audience, can you tell me a little bit more about how your background fits into that?
Well, when I was in law enforcement, I was a commander as a collateral duty of special operations, which included the SWAT team and search and rescue. Well, we noticed probably in the mid to late 90s, we were having a lot of searches for persons with cognitive disorders. At that time, it was more Alzheimer's and dementia. But then as we kind of rolled into the 2000s, we kind of picked up on the fact that we were having more incidents involving children with cognitive situations such as autism. Well, back then, there wasn't a lot known about autism. In fact, when I did the research, the figures were 1 in 10,000. But I had a very good friend that was a U.S. Marshal whose son had autism, and he asked me would I please include him in the program. I had a little trepidation at first. It's one thing going after an 85-year-old that can walk at a certain speed. It's another going after a, 8, 9, 10-year-old that can go wide open. Well, in spite of that, I said, we're going to go ahead and try it. Well, the word started getting around, and we started having more and more people asking could they become involved in the program, because apparently at that time they called it eloping. That situation was not getting better, it was getting worse, and the figures were closing from 1 in 10,000 and going closer every day. So we kind of said, we're gonna embrace going after missing autistic children as well as other cognitive situations. And that's how we got involved with it. And then we started working with a lot of the autism groups in the state of Virginia and nationally.
So it sounds like you might have seen this trend of an increase in prevalence of autism before the general community or general public did, right?
Well, I would say so. Like I, said, 1 in 10,000. I think what the figure is now, 1 in 35.
Yeah, I think
That
it's
is a
like
tremendous increase. And I'm seeing more and more cases and more, as they say, if you've seen one child with autism, you've seen one child with autism, and the differences are striking.
so what specific challenges do police and first responders face when searching for autistic individuals?
The biggest challenge they face is time. Unfortunately, when an autistic child goes missing, I think they probably have developed an attraction or a mission. They're trying to get to something or somewhere that attracts them. Unfortunately, most of these things are dangerous. So the response has to be quick. We have to know something about the child, what attracts them, where may they have gone. And we also need to know the lay of the land. Where is water? Where is something that they may be attracted to? For instance, I had one child that I can remember was attracted to traffic lights. Another was attracted to trains. The unfortunate situation, however, is that the majority of them seem to be attracted to water, which, as you can imagine, is a very dangerous situation, and time is against us.
Yeah, I know like for us, because we know that with autism, the statistic is basically that the number one cause of death for autistic children is drowning. And for us, we have two autistic kids. They're going to be 6 and 7 now. And both of them were significantly attracted to water. I remember one incident with my child who was like 3 at the time, and we were on this like cliffside beach. And there was the beach water below the cliff, and she just wanted to dart right off that cliff to get to the beach. So that was kind of what like sent off the alarm bells of like, oh, we really have to worry about this. And I know that a lot of parents out there struggle with that too.
Oh, for sure. Most of the children that we locate are at or near or in water.
That's so scary. That's why we encourage our parents like at least put your kids in swimming lessons. We have ours in adaptive swim lessons, but it's like so important. And a lot of parents also worry with like these search efforts and everything that their child might not respond to their name because that's common when it comes to autism, or they might hide because of some sort of like sensory aversion or fear or something like that. How does that impact any search efforts for these kids?
Well, it impacts it greatly. When you have police officers that are responding that may not be trained in searching for autistic children, the common habit is to call their name, and they don't realize that, as you said, in many instances they don't respond or they will hide. We have found them in some very precarious situations. I actually located one that had gone into their own garage and gotten into a trunk and closed the lid. Not a good situation to be in. Would not answer. Had we not had the equipment to track him, I don't know if we had on an opportunity to locate him before harm came to him. So these are the kind of things that police officers have got going against them, not for them. So it does make a search a very precarious situation.
So you told us a little bit about how you got started with Project Lifesaver. Can you tell us a little bit about what the goal of it is and what ultimately the problem is that you are trying to solve through Project Lifesaver?
Well, the goal is to anybody that's missing, we locate them quickly, safely, and bring them home before harm comes to them. Now, what is it that what is we're trying to do? Well, you have to understand that when a search like this is initiated, it starts off small, maybe with one, two, three, or four, or five officers. But as time goes by, that search grows exponentially. So you have a lot more people involved, covering a lot more area, a lot more resources, become involved, which unfortunately we have to look at that in some situations because that's taxpayer money. And searches can get very, very expensive. And the longer it goes, probably the chances of recovering a person without injury or worse diminish. So our goal is to make this search quick, as I said, safe, efficient, and use the least amount of manpower necessary to do it.
So you mentioned how you probably wouldn't have found that little boy if it wasn't for the Project Lifesaver program. Can you walk us through how the program works from the moment a parent realizes that their child is missing? And I think there is some sort of device or something involved. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, the device is like a wrist bracelet with a little compartment on it, and there's a radio transmitter in it. Excuse me. That particular transmitter will send a signal every 1 to 1 3/4 seconds on a set frequency. Now, when a person goes missing that has one of these bracelets, they the responding officer, will respond tune into that frequency and try to pick up that radio signal. Once they pick it up, they will track in that direction until they locate that person. Uh, it's very simply radio direction finding, which has been around since World War II. Very reliable, very safe, very, as to repeat myself, very dependable. We've had over 5,000 rescues that have been very successful, averaging a time of about 30 minutes from on scene to recovery. So that's what the officer is trying to do: locate the radio signal that's emanating from the bracelet. And by the way, the bracelet is worn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can take showers with it, you can swim with it. The signal is constantly going. We do not monitor the signal unless the person goes missing. We're notified, we roll into the area, then we tune in the receivers, and the trained personnel start looking for that signal to track to the person.
So you gave us a time of like what amount of time that reduces things by. What typically happens if the kid didn't have that bracelet? Does it typically just take a lot longer? Are the outcomes a lot like higher risk, or what's the consequence of not using Project Lifesaver?
Well, to answer your question, yeah, both. It takes a lot longer, more people become involved, covers a lot more area. The cost is very high, and the chances of recovering them safely diminish as the clock ticks. As I said earlier, an autism search is counted in a matter of minutes. From the time a child with autism wanders or elopes, or whatever term you want to use, you've probably got about 15 to 20 to 25 minutes before they're in trouble.
I also wanted to ask you, when it comes to the parent wanting to get involved with this, like how do they get involved? Do they like go up to the local police department and just ask for the program and then they're put on a list? Do you have to fill out like a waiver form? Like what are the steps for the parents if they were interested in this?
Well, that depends on the agency that's conducting the program. We don't monitor every part of what they do, except who's doing the searching and who's doing the using the equipment. Now, if a person wants to become involved, they can go to our website. They can click on where are we, put in their zip code, and it'll tell you every agency that has the program within a 50-mile radius. If your agency is doing the program, look for the information that's displayed and reach out and talk to them. They will most likely have you come to them, or they will come to you. They will explain the program, show you the equipment. Now, we do have what we call not a contract, but a memorandum of understanding as to what is expected of you, such as you check that transmitter every day to make sure it's working. If it's not, you notify that agency. If the person goes missing, you notify the agency right away. You don't initiate a search on your own. You're wasting time. And if for some reason you feel like that device is not working, you notify them immediately so they can respond and replace or repair it. Those are the three things that we require of the caregiver. So this is pretty much all that's involved. I'm a proponent of the KISS principle. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's
I sure
the
do.
acronym. Well, you know what it is, and I'm a big proponent of it. The simpler, the better, the easier, the more it will work without defect.
Okay, that totally makes sense to me. So another thing to consider is that, a lot of parents don't really know those steps to take. So you mentioned like when it comes to Project Lifesaver, at least the first step would be informing, I guess, their local police district that has that registered. That's what you're saying, correct?
Yeah, now it could be police, could be sheriff, could be a fire department, could be a search and rescue team. And that's
Okay.
why I say you go to our website. Now, if you have problems locating it on the website, you can give us a call at uh, our office in either Chesapeake or our headquarters here in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and we'll see if we can't guide you to an agency near you.
Okay. And then from a law enforcement perspective, are there any proactive things that parents can do, parents of autistic kids who tend to elope before an emergency happens, like anything preventative?
Well, I think the first thing is know the area you live in. Try to take steps to secure your residents. If there are any registry programs with the police or sheriff's department, make sure that you're signed into them with a current picture. And if Project Lifesaver is there, enroll your child. And the one piece of advice I always give to parents with autistic children, just because they have never wandered or eloped, don't assume they won't. It only takes one time, and that one time may be too late.
That is definitely something that we've struggled with is our kids sometimes they elope a lot and sometimes it's been a year and you think that they're over it and then something happens and they're eloping again. So you never really know. It's kind of scary, but so I also wanted to ask you, in addition to having that photo on file, what are some key details that parents should provide to first responders to help with a search should this emergency happen?
All right, whether it's a Project Lifesaver search or a regular search, the first thing you want to be able to tell the responding officer is everything about the child and give them a picture. Where were they last seen and how long ago? Uh, were they talking or expecting to go somewhere that maybe plans changed and you couldn't go? We've seen that happen a lot. For instance, you had planned to go to the movies or the circus or some event. Something happened and you had to change your plans. Well, I think you know as well as I do, autistic kids don't change or take well to change of plans or surprises. Uh, these are things that the officer needs to know. What were they wearing? Uh, where are the nearest bodies of water? Those are the things you need to be able to provide right away. The officer may or may not know the lay of the land because in police work, an officer may work a district one day and work an entirely district the next day that they're not that familiar with. So be prepared to give them this information and give it to them rapidly.
Is there anything that the parent should be doing during that search? So, like, let's say they got you the information, you guys are out there, you're looking. Is there anything that the parent should be doing during that time?
I would say this, stay home. Because if law enforcement locates something, they need to know where you are and how to get hold of you right away. Uh, Now, if you have a cell phone and a landline, you could use one of those phones to call some of your friends to see if they have seen anything or know anything or any of your neighbors. But a lot of parents will leave the residence and the law enforcement officers will need some more information and they can't find them. Uh, you're not going to help in the search. The best thing you can do is give the information, stay home so that you can be rapidly contacted if necessary.
I'm glad I asked that because I would have never thought of that. And obviously, as a parent, you're going to be panicking and wanting to physically go out there and search for your kids. So it's good to know because I definitely would have not done that.
Well, this
um,
is one of the reasons I think Project Lifesaver is so successful. Not only the equipment, but you're using trained personnel that are used to dealing with emergencies, used to dealing to high stress situations where parents or caregivers, they're not. And I've never seen a search where, the caregiver or the parents weren't, I'd use the term, a basket case. And I understand that. I probably would be too if it was, a loved one of mine.
yeah. So I was wondering, kind of on the preventative side of things, is there any option for parents to, I guess, familiarize their child with law enforcement or anything like that prior to having like an elopement incident? Are there programs or anything like that where autistic kids can have an opportunity to, I would say, reduce the anxiety in case you guys go out there, you see them, and then they can hopefully recognize you?
Well, many agencies do have those type programs, and I, encourage parents to check with the agency and see if they do. Now, one of the things about Project Lifesaver is the child is going to see an officer every so often who's going to be checking that bracelet, maybe changing the battery in the band every 30 or 60 days. And we encourage that with these agencies because the officers get to know the family, they get to know the child, they become familiar. And there's a rapport that starts to grow between the family and the officer. I know when I was actively out in the field when I first started this program and changing batteries, and getting to know the families, I actually gained 15 pounds. Uh, Families always wanted to feed me or give me cake or something, and you're not going to refuse that kind of thing. So you just go with it. But you do, you get to know the family, you get to know the person that you're going to be searching for, they get to know you. And yes, a comfort level does grow.
So, what can parents do if their local law enforcement isn't yet part of the program? I know you mentioned they can go online and see if there's one near them, but what if there isn't?
Get with your advocacy groups, not only autism, but get with your Alzheimer's and dementia advocacy group. Go see your sheriff or your police chief. Tell them about Project Lifesaver. Tell them you want him to look into it, and if all possible, you would like for them to adopt it. Now, some departments may not have the budget. It is not really expensive to start the program, but there is a cost. So be prepared to offer ways to raise money to help them in installing the program. It's usually cost about $5,000 to bring the program in, which is not a tremendous amount of money, but depending on the size of the department, they may not have it in their budget. And police departments are not really equipped to go out and raise money. Sheriff's offices are much more equipped to do that. But be prepared. Be prepared to present your case. Be prepared to help them get the program.
And what can we do, or what would you recommend in terms of getting like your local community or schools and first responders to work together to better protect these autistic kiddos? Is there an ideal way of getting the community involved with this program, or are there any initiatives being done to help bring this more into the community and the schools and things like that?
I think you got to, do a lot of walking and traveling. You're going to have to talk to some of these people. You're going to have to get them on board. The problem with a lot of your schools, unless it's a school that really knows something about autism, is they don't know about autism. And they don't really follow the news that close about wandering incidents. So I think you need to educate them. I think you need to educate sometimes the police and sheriff's departments. Now, in the recent years, there has been a push to educate more law enforcement and public safety officers about autism, how to deal with it, and how to interact with those that may have it. In fact, that's part of our program when we train these officers. How do you interact? How do you deal with them? How do you talk to them? How do you get them in your car to get them home? When you locate them, that's only half the story. Now you got to get them back home. And that's not always an easy task. I think it's going to come down to education. It's going to come down to getting your advocacy groups, excuse me, I can't seem to talk tonight, on board. Not just autism. There's strength in numbers. The more you have that go in from different disciplines, the more the persuasion is going to be on the head of the agency. And once you get that started, insist on your schools and all to educate these teachers. Even if you have to volunteer to go in or have someone volunteer to go in and have seminars to talk to them about it, or any of these kind of situations, do public speaking. Speak to some of these organizations such as Rotary, Lions Club. Let them know what you're doing and why you're doing it. If they don't know, they're not going to assist. We found out that once these people know what you're doing and why you're doing it, they are much more compatible to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've looked into is trying to advocate in our local community and educate the public more on autism. I had a question. So you mentioned, sometimes it's hard to get the autistic kids, to do what you need them to do and stuff. How does this differ with autistic kids who are younger versus the autistic adults that might be more severe autistic? Because I've seen cases where there's elopement in both cases. You might have like a 27-year-old severely autistic eloper. You might have a 3-year-old autistic eloper. Does that experience change anything, or I guess, is there a different level of training for those two situations?
It it doesn't really change anything. Our approach to any person with autism is to be slow, methodical, calm, talk to them. Don't put your hands on them if you don't have to. Remember, safety first. Now, it is much easier dealing with a 3 or 4 year old, yes, and as to dealing with a adolescent or a full grown adult, because many times they're already stressed and they may want to become combative. So you have to be careful with that. So yes, and those things come with the training. They also come with experience. We're finding now that we have a lot of officers and firefighters that have autistic children, and we're calling on them to educate those that are working with you. If your child were to go, and this is something that we have added, when a person is added to the program, we want to ask the question, what is the best way to get them to work with us when we locate them? I'll give you an example. The U.S. Marshal that first got us into the program with his son, I always knew how to get him right in the car. All I had to do was say, "Hey, you want to go to McDonald's?" And it was a shoe in. Now, how did I know that? Because the parent told me. That's how you get them to cooperate. Your parents know these children better than anybody. So you want to know from them, if there's a problem, what is the best way or the best method I can use to calm this situation down? And if you see that you can't do it and it's not working, just hold the situation and get the parent there. They know how to usually get cooperation. So we train them in that particular aspect.
And that's why it's important that we stay home. uh,
Yes, it is.
So I wanted to also ask you, people might not really be familiar to what a search and rescue looks like. If their child were to elope and, they are staying put, staying home, what could you give us some insight on like what is happening? Like what is the process when their kid is being searched for, I guess?
Well, now remember, there's two searches. There's a Project Lifesaver search, and there's what we call a normal search. The normal search, an officer will respond to the call that the child is missing. They will get the information. They will put out a radio broadcast to all the other surrounding units, probably ask for additional units to come into the area to assist with the search. After a time, if they're not located, post haste, they're going to have a supervisor come in on the scene who is probably going to add more units and also bring in other resources if they're not already there, such as K9 or other ground teams. And that's, it's going to keep growing from that point on, depending on whether or not they locate the person. The longer it takes to locate them, the more people and officers and all are going to become involved. So that's pretty much what's happening with a normal search. Now, with a Project Lifesaver search, they're going to be notified. They're going to respond into the area. They're going to turn the receivers on and tune into the frequency. Once they lock into that frequency, they're going to head in the direction of the radio signal. They're going to visualize and locate the person. They're then going to take steps to get them into their vehicles and get them back home safely, or get a parent out there to help them and assist to get the person to cooperate.
And if you could give parents one piece of advice when it comes to keeping their autistic child safe, from your experience and what you've seen, what would that piece of advice be?
Keep your eye on them. Never assume anything. Never assume that they won't wander or elope. Know what they are attracted to. I would also take steps to secure your home as much as possible. Now, you don't want to make it a prison. I understand that. But when I say keep an eye on them, nobody can physically watch somebody 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So you want to have a little security in your home, maybe alarms, locks on your door that they can't manipulate. And I think you probably know as well as I do, children with autism are good at manipulating things. So I guess the one piece of advice, know your child, know their habits, know where they may go if they elope. What caused this elopement?
If I may ask a follow-up question to that, because it made me think of something when you said the locks. We are a family that has locks. You may or may not know the answer to this question. That's fine. But I was just wondering, I know that there's been incidences and issues that there's parents of autistic kids who put protective locks in their home, and then it becomes a legal issue because then they say, oh, you're like, what's it called? Like, not imprisoning, but you're like not allowing your child access to exit, which is apparently not good or legal, I believe. Do parents need to like go through their local police or something like that to like get approval or like let them know like, hey, this is the situation so they don't get in trouble for doing that?
Well, I think that might be a safe bet. I don't think they're going to get in trouble. But as far as letting the police know, well, that goes back to registering your child. Let the police know that you have a child with autism and they are have a tendency to wander or elope, and you do have these safeguards. If there's any legal problem, the police will tell you, and you can adjust it, to form and fit within the legal ramifications.
Okay, just wondering because I've seen that happen.
Oh yeah, and
So
every area has different laws, so you can't assume that because one area does that, that another area will also do it.
good to know. Good to know. Thank you for that. So I want to wrap up here with a question that I ask all of our guests. Our podcast is called Embracing Autism, and it tends to mean something a little different for everyone. So I was wondering what the concept or phrase embracing autism means to you personally.
I think it means to know autism, know what the autistic child may or may not do and how to handle it, how to reassure and help parents through some of the situations they may encounter with autism, and to understand, as I said earlier, and it's become a catchphrase, I know that if you see one child or one person with autism, you see one child or person with autism. I think you need the knowledge to be able to understand as much as possible what autism is, what it isn't, and how to deal with it.
And before we wrap up, where can my listeners find you and learn more about Project Lifesaver? Do you guys have a website or anything like that?
Yes, we do. We have a website. You can go to www.projectlifesaver.org, or you can go to our Facebook page, Project Lifesaver International.
Thank you so much for that. So, you guys out there, listen, you heard that. Make sure you go and check out their website, give them a follow on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate having this conversation. I think it was really a powerful discussion. And, we're all focused on keeping our autistic loved ones safe. For the parents out there listening, remember, it seems like the theme here is be proactive. It's the best way to protect your child. And whether it's preparing for first responders with key information or making sure your community has the right resources or looking for programs like Project Lifesavers, you do have options. So please be sure to check out Project Lifesaver. Again, that website is projectlifesaver.org to learn more. And until next time, keep embracing autism. Thank you so much, Jean.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bye.